How you doing, everybody? I'm gonna try to not cry before my 5 minutes is up. um, I'll just tell you a little bit about myself. I grew up in the church. Um, my father's a pastor. Mother's a school teacher. Wonderful family. Um, for whatever reason, I never really understood why God was important to me. Why I needed to have that. And I'm sure a lot of testimonies start out like this, but um, I think it's important for a lot of people to understand that it's pretty normal to grow up in the church and not actually go to church. Um, and that's what happened to me. I fell away, and I didn't see any reason or rhyme to it to go to church. I mean, my family was always there, and I felt like God kind of stole my family. And it's funny because I can remember, a year ago saying to myself, saying to everybody I knew, as boldly as I could, there's no way in the world you're going to get me to go to church. There's no way in the world you're going to get me to see it your way, because it's not right. It's wrong, and I was really convinced of that. Well, needless to say that I think clearly it proves that without God, your life is a total mess, and mine definitely was. I started drinking a lot, more than I can even know, and it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And there came a point where I just knew there's no way I could go on like this. I couldn't survive in this condition. I was totally sick. Still not thinking God was a solution. I turned to a friend from help that I knew that had this problem before, and they had been sober for many years. So I talked to them, and I said, actually, when I went up to him, I didn't know what to say. And he just looked at me and he said, it's okay, man, I understand. And he took me under his wing, and he showed me everything he knew. I got involved with a 12-step program that is just unbelievable. I recommend to anybody. But one of the steps in that program was admit to yourself that, or acknowledge that there's a higher power than yourself, called God. And I wasn't feeling too easy about that step. And the next step underneath that one was give your life to Him. And I'm like, that's crazy. This is nuts. I just want to quit drinking. I don't want all this God stuff. So I kept going and I kept going, and I was about 3 months sober somehow. I wasn't really working any of the steps, and I ran into a kid one day when I was having a horrible, horrible time. He goes to this church. His name's Jeremy. I won't tell you his last name because I don't want to embarrass him, but great guy. Anyway, he's having a hard day, really rough day. Everything was going wrong, and my key had actually broke off in my ignition. That's how bad of a day I was having. And he walked up, and he was all chipper and stuff, and he's just listening to me complain and say how horrible everything is, and I said, dude, that's great. I'm glad you found a way of life for you that works, but just it's not for me. Thanks. And he's like, dude, I know you don't want to hear this, but I'm just going to say it again because I think it's important for you to remember this. The only thing that helped me was God. He said, I was in a similar situation like you. I was an alcoholic. I had problems with drugs, and, the only thing that helped me was God, and I can't believe that it worked. I don't know how it worked. I don't know why, but it did, and I'm glad it did. And he said, do you want to pray Jesus in your heart with me? And I said, what are you, crazy? So I'm not praying Jesus into my heart. That's nuts. And I said, but you know what? I'll pray with you. And he said, I understand how you feel. And I said, really? You understand the feeling of not feeling anything? I said, I'm not mad. I'm not happy. I'm not sad. I'm not depressed. Any of that. And he said, yeah, I've been there. I understand that. We ended up praying, and somehow I felt this warm glow on me. It was weird. And nevertheless, it freaked me out, and because I felt something and forever. Like I hadn't felt something in a long time. And I ended up going to church with him. And the next time, the day I was at church with him, I was sitting over there, and I thought the church service was a little outrageous. You know, I didn't know what was going on. I was raised in a very conservative church, and people are blowing horns and all kinds of crazy stuff's going on, and I was like, man, this is weird. And, well, you know, to wrap it up, the pastor or somebody up here said, does anybody need any prayer? And I'm like, well, shoot, you know, yes, last night, you know, I prayed with this guy I don't know, and I felt something. That's cool, I guess. I don't know if that's cool, but I felt something. It was different. So I raised my hand like an idiot, and of course, it felt like the entire church came over to where I was sitting. And at first I'm like, oh no, what did I do? And they put their hands on me, and they just prayed. Everybody had their own prayer. It wasn't weird at all, and it should have been to me. But it wasn't. It felt good to know that people cared, and that, you know, God had a plan for my life, and that he cared. And it was an experience I'll never forget, and it's a relationship that I'll never lose, and I'm so glad for that, because my life is completely different than it was. I've been sober now for 9 months. I have no desire to have a drink today. I have no desire for any of that. All I know is that somehow God has put me through EMT school, where half of my classmates failed out of, and I was never good in school. I've saved a few lives in the meantime. That reminded me a little bit of myself. And I'm about to enter into fire school, and it's like, God, I finally have a future. Thank you. I don't know how to say it any other way, but if you're looking for if you're looking for a feeling that is actually real and it's not just something you hear people talk about, just raise your hand one time and ask for some prayer, and I guarantee you he'll show up to your door.